Welcome to this week's Movie Math, giving you an in-depth analysis of the box office for the weekend of September 14th, where two Paul Andersons made headlines. WS snapped the top spot while Thomas broke the per-screen average limited release record. He should thank me because I'm one of the East and West Coasters who ran to the movie in Pavlovian fashion this weekend. And after seeing The Master, I can say with confidence that this is one film that will be hotly debated and perhaps even divisive during this year's Oscar season. I'll voice my own opinion about the film in the second half of this episode, but first, let's talk box office. While industry analysts felt Finding Nemo 3D would float to the top of the box office, all of The Lion King 3D, apparently moviegoers pulled a Dory and forgot to go this weekend. Instead, Alice demonstrated her impressive survival skills once more, as Resident Evil Retribution just barely took the #1 spot. Yet while this was the second lowest stateside debut for the franchise since it began a decade ago, clearly this movie isn't for us Americans anymore. See, with every entry, a greater percentage of Resident Evil's box office comes from overseas, and Retribution is no exception. Capturing $50 million, more than double its debut here, Retribution is already ahead of Afterlife's $39 million foreign debut. And for an example of just how popular these model fight zombies in 3D action flicks are, in Japan, Retribution more than doubled the debut of The Dark Knight Rises. It was also a hot property in Russia, thanks to their love of native Jovovich, and Brazil, thanks to their love of butts. And while Jovovich was quick to criticize Summit for not doing enough to promote her and hubby's recent box office flop, The Three Musketeers, things between her and Sony are just peachy, as the distributor even went so far as to praise her for contributing to Retribution's success with her tireless global campaigning. All I can say is that at San Diego Comic-Con, she only did 2 red carpet interviews for Retribution and then bailed, leaving many reporters, including myself, stuck piecing together a Retribution interview segment without any footage of its star. As for Finding Nemo 3D, it performed almost identical to Beauty and the Beast 3D, which strongly indicates that the box office success of The Lion King 3D was an anomaly. So unless Monsters, Inc. or The Little Mermaid can break this 17 million-ish debut trend, don't expect any more 3D re-releases. That would be too bad, as I myself had a great time Friday night watching both Finding Nemo 3D and its accompanying Toy Story short, Partysaurus Rex. With the rest of the box office, there were no real standouts. In fact, the whole thing was rather sad, as in contrast to numbers 1 and 2, starting at number 3, the rest jumped off the edge of a cliff. But there were some headlines to be found in the specialty market. Now, if you wanted to see Arbitrage this weekend, all you had to do was turn on your TV or computer, as the movie was available on-demand in iTunes. But if you wanted to go out, the film was also playing in a little under 200 theaters. And while some in Hollywood have been trying for quite some time now to convince the rest of Tinseltown and audiences that releasing a film across multiple platforms simultaneously is not a sure sign of a dud, this time they were finally right. Arbitrage shot to number 2 on iTunes and pulled in enough money at the box office to boast the biggest theatrical debut for a film released in this manner. That's the kind of news that should add some much-needed heat to not only Arbitrage's prospects, but the film's effort to at least get star Richard Gere a few nominations this award season. But the real news of the weekend was The Master, which shattered Moonrise Kingdom's record for the biggest per-screen average for a live-action limited-release film. And while that might seem like an awful lot of qualifications for a broken record is a broken record, and only serves as yet another feather in this film's increasingly ornate cap. And as I said earlier, The Master's success is largely attributed to the Pavlovian need of cinephiles to see the film, thanks to the crystal-clear ding of the bell, which is critical and festival praise mixed with PTA's reputation. And if that sounds like a surreal way to describe The Master's success, just wait until you experience this surreal film. Obviously, the level of craft in front of and behind the camera is impeccable, as one would expect from the caliber of talent involved across the board. Yet I get the distinct feeling that discussions about The Master will be eerily similar to the discussions in the film about Lancaster Dodd's second novel, The Split Saber, and that is exactly how Paul Thomas Anderson wants it. Because of that, I'd say The Master reminds me of Christopher Nolan's Inception, where the director applied dream logic to the narrative itself, resulting in a film that actually made audiences question reality for a few days after seeing it, myself included. Similarly, I feel that PTA is using the tricks of a mystic like Dodd, as he's described in the film, to make The Master. Therefore, let me ask you this. What if, like Nolan, PTA himself is conducting a social experiment, where he's seeing if he can lure you into a cult, the cult of appreciating this film? When I left the theater, I couldn't decide if I had been scammed or enlightened on how people get snared into a cult, or if this is failed art or a brilliant social experiment. What do you think of both the film and this new idea that a film's #1 goal is not to entertain? Be sure to write your thoughts down below. As for this coming weekend, you might get the chance to see The Master yourself as it expands its run in a very crowded marketplace, with Dread, End of Watch, The House at the End of the Street, and Trouble with the Curve all opening wide. And that's the weekend box office. I'm Grace Randolph, and we just did some movie math. As always, thanks for watching, and I hope you'll go beyond the trailer for these other top movies.